that can remember the Bank of the United States was a little bit controversial. It was established and maintained mainly by what type of people in the United States? Federalists and the wealthy. Okay, and Jackson definitely is neither of those. Okay, and so President Jackson is going to have an opposition to the Bank of the United States, and that's our next subtopic, is President Jackson's opposition to the Bank of the United States. Now, probably one of President Jackson's most bitter fights during the time that he spent as President of the United States was against the Bank of the United States. He did not care for the Bank of the United States in any way, shape, or form, or what it stood for. Okay? He had 3 personal opinions about the Bank of the United States in general. 3 personal opinions about the Bank of the United States in general. And I'll give you those opinions. So, again, one of President Jackson's most bitter fights during his presidency was against the Bank of the United States, and Jackson's attack on the Bank of the United States stemmed from his own opinions of the bank. Number 1, in general, Jackson both disliked and distrusted banks. Okay? Wouldn't matter what bank it was, but he certainly didn't help any support of the Bank of the United States when he didn't trust banks or didn't like them. Okay? So he didn't trust them or like them. Now I want you to think about this. Sometimes if you don't trust or don't like something, maybe it's because you don't what? Understand. So the second opinion he had is he didn't understand the banking system at all. So it makes kind of sense. A lot of people that don't like this or don't like that, sometimes they don't like it because they don't understand it. Once they get the understanding it, they might tend to like it. But he disliked and distrusted banks, and he also did not understand the banking system at all. Okay? Now, the third opinion that Jackson had is he saw the Bank of the United States as a, quote, money power. He saw the Bank of the United States as a money power, which I believe is on your ID sheet, is it not? He saw it as a money power. Now, anybody want to take a gander? We'll pick on Kellyanna right off the bat since she's been here one day. My dear, we do a lot of talking back and forth. So what do you think a money power would be?
Something that like controls.
Okay, control of what? Okay, and who did he think controlled that? A money power, you're really close. A money power is like a monopoly. A monopoly is when you control everything. And he saw the Bank of the United States as a money power or a monopoly controlled by who? That he didn't like. What? Go ahead. Who controlled it in his mind? Who controlled the Bank of the United States? Easy question. The wealthy, okay? The rich and powerful had this monopoly on the Bank of the United States, okay? They used the Bank of the United States to their advantage. They didn't care a lick about the common person or anything about their finances. So the third opinion that Jackson had is he saw the Bank of the United States as a money power, a monopoly in which the rich and powerful used the bank to their own advantage, caring nothing about the common person. Now, how does a bank run? Who's in the banking business? Are any parents in the banking business here? I've got Pinnacle Bank, you know, with Anna McHenry in the last class. Had the Cadies before when they were in the security bank. What makes a bank run? How do you make, you know, how does a bank work? How do you get a bank going? What do you have to make a bank start? It just miraculously appears? Money. And where does this money come from to start a bank? Investments, stockholders. And you do make money on loans, obviously. That's why they charge you a percentage rate on a loan. But if you're going to get a bank started, you've got to have stockholders. You've got to have people that are willing to invest their money in that bank with the idea that they'll take part of the what? Profits. Right. Okay? So the trouble that Jackson had with the Bank of the United States is, where do you think the majority of the stockholders in the Bank of the United States were from? Northeast and the eastern seaboard, which were again what? Rich people. So he just despised that thought. And it was true. The majority of the stockholders in the Bank of the United States were wealthy people. Obviously, those are the type of people that can invest in banks. I'm going to tell you right now, you can make $1 billion in 1 year if you build a casino in Las Vegas. No question. If you build a casino in Las Vegas and run it for a year, you can make $1 billion. What's the problem with that? Why doesn't Olivia go do that? Yeah, she needs $10 million to build the casino to make $1 billion. Well, who has that kind of money? Not Olivia or me or JC or any of those people. It's wealthy stockholders. So the rich get richer is kind of philosophy. You see what I'm saying? And Jackson just hated that, okay? There were some people that lived west of the Appalachian Mountains that had stock in the Bank of the United States, but they were very few and far between. There were some wealthy people that lived over here, but the majority of the stockholders in the Bank of the United States were wealthy people from the east and northeast. And that just drove Jackson nuts. Now, what else might he do? And this is kind of a stretch to see if you know this, but concerning politics, what did he accuse the Bank of the United States of doing concerning politics? And you hear about this once in a while. You're pretty darn close. What do you mean by that?
Like going to politicians for their own favors.
That's exactly right. He was upset because he truly believed that these representatives from the Bank of the United States would lend money to members of Congress for what? Political favors. Okay? And he just hated that. Okay? So another problem he had, other than the majority of the stockholders in the Bank of the United States were wealthy people from the northeast and eastern seaboard, is he thought the bank was lending money to members of Congress in exchange for political favors. Well, we'll lend you this money, Dane, but when it comes up to passing that bill that's going to benefit my bank next year, how about if you vote yes for that? That's what Jackson accused the Bank of the United States of doing. Matter of fact, Jackson was so against the Bank of the United States, he thought it was simply unconstitutional. He didn't even think the bank was legal. He thought it was unconstitutional. He felt that the mere existence of the Bank of the United States was unconstitutional. Now, do you remember what has to happen with the Bank of the United States? And it's happened a couple of times. They have to apply their charter, their lease. And that was coming up. Okay? And the bank applies to renew their lease, who votes for its approval or disapproval? Say it. Congress. And so, despite Jackson's feelings about the Bank of the United States, when their lease came up, which was required every 4 years, they reapplied to Congress. And Congress passed it through both houses of Congress, both through the House and the Senate, in the summer of 1832. So the lease for this Bank of the United States came up. Jackson strongly voiced his opinion against it. Despite that, both houses of Congress, the House and the Senate, approved the new 4-year lease for the bank in the summer of 1832. Now, once Congress passes something like that, what does the president have the right to do? Veto, and he did. Does that mean it doesn't happen? If the president vetoes a bill, does that mean it doesn't go through? No, it just means that it's very clear that the most powerful man in the country doesn't like the law. Okay? So Jackson vetoed the bill. And what's coming up in 1832? An election. So the Bank of the United States will be a major campaign issue in the election of 1832, because it did get a new lease and it is renewed for 4 more years. So with that said, we're going to move to the election of 1832. Now, what are our two parties at this time? We haven't had an election in a little bit. What are our two parties? Democratic Party and the Republican Party, who are now calling themselves the National Republicans. Okay? Because remember, what was his party? Democratic Republicans. So, during the election of 1832, the National Republicans are going to nominate a candidate. Anybody want to guess who that is? No? We've heard of him before. Henry Clay. Henry Clay is going to run for the presidency in 1832. How does Jackson get along with him? Not very good. So this will be an interesting election. Now, do you think Clay campaigned in favor of the Bank of the United States or opposed it? Absolutely favored. Yeah, absolutely favored. So during the election of 1832, the National Republican Party nominates Henry Clay for the presidency. He's from Kentucky, and he's going to campaign in favor of the Bank of the United States. And Jackson's going to run for re-election for the Democratic Party, and he's going to continue his vigorous opposition to the Bank of the United States. So you got Clay for the Republicans. We'll just call them the Republicans, it's easier. Clay for the Republicans, Jackson for the Democrats seeking re-election, Clay in favor of the bank, Jackson opposing the bank. Well, running with Jackson as his vice presidential candidate was Martin Van Buren of New York. Martin Van Buren of New York was running with Jackson as his vice presidential running mate. Martin Van Buren. In this election, folks, 268 electoral votes were possible. This is how many were up for grabs. 268. Jackson and Van Buren won 219 of 268, which tells you what? What's that tell you? What's that? Common people spoke again, didn't they? And Jackson wins in a landslide. 219 out of 268 is a pretty good butt kicking in a political election. So Jackson is re-elected. Martin Van Buren will now be the new vice president of the United States, and Clay and the Republican Party suffer a crushing defeat in the election of 1832. So the common people are still ruling this country, so to speak. We're still making the emphasis. Okay? All right, that'll take us to our next subtopic, which is destroying the Bank of the United States. Despite the fact they have a new 4-year lease, Jackson's goal is to destroy the bank during his second term. Destroying the Bank of the United States. We'll see if he gets her done or not. Once he was reelected, that was his main goal. He was going to rid the country of the Bank of the United States. How would you do that? JC, how would you do that? I'm the Bank of the United States, and I've got a new 4-year contract to teach you guys. How are you gonna hurt me the worst? I'm sitting here in front of 27 wonderful students. Pete's not here, but he's part of it. I'm sitting here, I just got me a new 4-year contract, $350,000 4-year contract. JC thinks I'm getting paid too much. What are you gonna do to ruin my life? What are you gonna do? To do what? What would hurt me the most? How could you make sure that I couldn't stand up here and teach you guys? What? No, say it. Yeah, take away the students. So what JC does is she talks all of you guys to drop this class and take another class. And can I lecture here in front of nobody? You think they're going to pay me all that money? What I say, $360,000 over 4 years to teach nobody? No, what Jackson did is he gradually withdrew federal money from the Bank of the United States. He took the students out of the classroom. He took money that the government had in the Bank of the United States and he withdrew it. And what did he do with that money that he took? He put it in his own pocket? No, what did he do with it? He sent that money to another teacher. And he put some of that, he took Emily, and he took Michaela, he took Delaney, and he put her over there with that history teacher. Then he took Taylor and Kasia and Tristan and put them over there with that teacher. He took JC and took Paige and took Ivan, and they put them over there with that history teacher. And pretty soon I'm sitting here, and what do I got? Nothing. So what did he do with this money? He put it in state banks. He put it in different state banks. He took the money out of the Bank of the United States and he deposited those federal funds in certain state banks that they referred to as what? Pet banks. Banks that were loyal to who? Andrew Jackson. So that's how he kept Mr. Doerr from teaching AP US history. JC took all the students and deposited them into different classrooms. And I'm standing here going, there are no students to teach. There was no money in the bank. Because Jackson took it out and put it in pet banks, all that were loyal to President Jackson. Well, after he did that, could the bank function? No. So it struggled for the 4 years on the lease. And guess what happened when the next 4-year lease came out? What did Congress say because the bank was stinking it up? Done. So, in 1836, because of the actions that Jackson took, the Bank of the United States was forced to close. They did not get their lease renewed, nor did they have any way of surviving financially. And did Jackson destroy the Bank of the United States? Yes, he did. Does everybody understand the concept? Shame on you, JC. I'm standing here without anybody to teach. By the end of 1836, the bank was done. So, that'll take us to the election of 1836 and the end of the Jacksonian Era. The election of 1836 and the end of the Jacksonian Era. Could Jackson run again? Yes, if he wanted to, because we didn't pass that. Dwight Eisenhower, this guy right here, was the first president of the United States limited to 2 terms. So up to this point, anybody could have ran for more than 2. Franklin Roosevelt was elected to 4. Okay? So we'll see what happens here. Well, before the election, something kind of interesting happened. In January of 1835, President Jackson decided he would go over and visit the Capitol. Just go over to the Capitol. That was in January of 1835. Well, a deranged house painter by the name of Richard Lawrence approached the president and pointed his pistol at him. So, in January of 1835, President Jackson was visiting the Capitol, and a deranged or crazy house painter, you know those crazy paint-sniffing house painters, by the name of Richard Lawrence, approached the president at the Capitol and pointed his pistol at him and fired. Pistol misfired. Lawrence pulls out another pistol, which also misfired. Not very good at loading his guns, evidently. So picture that in your mind. Andrew Jackson's visiting the Capitol. He's walking down one of the rooms of the Capitol. A crazy house painter by the name of Richard Lawrence pulls out a pistol, fires it at the president, misfires. Takes his another pistol out, fires it at the president, it misfires. Jackson was so mad at this assassination attempt, he went after Lawrence with his cane. And he had to be restrained by members of his staff because he was going to beat the hell out of this guy with his cane. So this guy was tough. Guy shot at him twice, misfired. He went after him with his cane, got him a little bit. He was finally restrained by members of his staff. Now, at this point, Jackson wondered, do I want to run for another term as president? And there were many Americans and historians that will tell you that he probably could have been president for the rest of his life if he wanted to. He was that popular. So after pondering this assassination attempt and his health was getting a little tough, he decided that he would retire and announced that he would not seek a 3rd term. He would not run in 1836. So after this assassination attempt, the beating of the assassin, and his health being a little tough, he decided, yeah, I think I'll retire and not run. So who do you think the Democratic Party nominated for president? What's that? No, he was a Republican. Martin Van Buren, Vice President Martin Van Buren, would be the Democratic nominee for president, and a fellow by the name of Richard M. Johnson would run as his vice presidential running mate. So for the Democrats in 1836, after Jackson made it clear that he would not run for a 3rd term, the Democratic Party nominated Vice President Martin Van Buren for the presidency, with Richard M. Johnson as his running mate for vice president. How's the Republican Party doing? Not very good. They're kind of in disarray. And as a result of that, a new political party called the Whig Party enters this election. So the Republican Party's kind of going down the tubes. They're in disarray. And so the Whig Party, which is on your ID sheet, enters this election. Now they had a strategy because the Democratic Party was pretty powerful and they didn't think they could beat them just one-on-one. So what the Whigs did, think about this, is they purposely chose several candidates from different parts of the country to run for president under their party affiliation. Okay? So the Whigs purposely did not choose one presidential candidate, but they chose several candidates to run from different parts of the country. One of them was Daniel Webster. We've talked about him, right? Influential man from Massachusetts, controlling the northeastern part of the United States. He was one of the Whig nominees for president in 1836. Another one was a guy by the name of William Henry Harrison. Probably heard of him, because he's eventually going to become a president. And they ran Hugh L. White. So the Whigs purposely ran 3 men for the presidency from different parts of the country. Daniel Webster, Hugh L. White, and William Henry Harrison. This strategy became known in American history as the favorite son policy. Became known as the favorite son policy. So the fact that the Whigs ran 3 people in this election became known as the favorite son policy as far as